Hello. Let's start our CSCI 380 web programming interface design. And for this lecture, we're going to talk about what's the AJAX and then also JSON file and how can we use the AJAX. Okay, and what's the syntax or how to do the formattings. Okay, including the adjacent methods and properties. Okay, so what we're going to discuss before moving. So here's some revision question related to JS. So let's say if we're giving like if we have like two and two, okay, and then together is it bigger than 1 plus 4? So how do you think the equation? So suppose it be two because like when we add it together, just like you count as a number. So it's just like 1 plus 0, 1 plus 1 like this. Okay. And for this one, the JS, even though we define function and then this time we just log it, but just be careful. We have function and then pass this variable b like into this function, but we can still look at this variable b. So for like 3 and 4, index 1, 0, 1. So basically you will know the answer for like this. Okay. So when we talk about JSON file, so it's called a JavaScript object notation. Okay, so it's kind of like a subset of JS ECMA 262. Okay, it's totally a language independent. So if you are passing from let's say Java, you can send this JSON format, okay, or Python file, okay. So you can say, or of course, like JS. Okay, so you can say all this, and it's totally it's a text based. Okay, so you can read it. Basically, you can read it. Also, it's a lightweight, so far you can easy to use and face it. We can use that notation later. You can see we can access it, but just be careful. JSON is not the document format. It's not related. It's not the mega language. Okay, so like compared with the XML, it's not the XML. Be careful, remember this one. Also, it's not the general like serialization of a format. Okay, so nothing is recursive, recurring structure, nothing, and there's no invisible structure. Okay, so that's what you see. Okay, no function is included. So it's like really computed text, and just remember. Okay, so it's like the format is an object. Okay, so just like basically, and then we can access it for location. So it's called a JSON file. And what can we use it for? Like for this object, like JSON. So we can use it to transfer data. So between the server side and client. So you will see when we post the data, okay, to our server, like through the method like post, right, or put update. So we say in the payload body, then we will transfer it in the JSON format, or when we return a list of object, okay, from the server side, so we can say, so it's kind of simple and common representation of data. So you see we have a curly bracket and then using common, we get a name and value, and that's it. Okay, or sometimes we got key and value. So far we don't have any specific version or like, so there's no revision like defined of it. So it's like kind of very stable, like we always using it the same format. Okay. And the character encoding is like strictly is it just like Unicode. So it's really safe, okay, stable. And we can, no matter which version you are using, let's say we using a Node.js, Happy.js, or like Express, whatever, when we using a JSON, they are always the same. Okay. And so for in the JSON data type, so like what the value, so we can have some like strings, okay. We come with the double quote and we have the numbers, okay. Just maybe when we say it's number, including the full numbers, okay, that means that with decimals, non-decimal integers, right? So they're not counting as the numbers, okay. And we have the Boolean, okay, Boolean is true or false, okay. And also we have object. So object that means that we have the curly bracket and then we have the key and values pair. Okay, so coming like this, we can adding an array inside, and of course we can be like adding a null, true, false, all this. Okay, so what it would be everything, the data types and values are included in the JSON format. And in these objects, we can it so they are like an order container of like key value pair. So everything wrapped inside the curly bracket. So we say, so if we have multiple key value pairs, then we're using a comma. to separate it. Okay. And then like in between the keys and value, say, okay, there's a name, and then we put a code and then follow with the values. Okay. So this one is we call the key value pairs. Okay. So all the keys, they are string. So we can, like, you can see sometimes when we create a JSON objects, okay, so we have a double quote, or sometimes we're using single quote, depends on, just be remembered, just consistent. Okay. So we use all these keys, they are strings, and all the values are from the JSON data type. So we are referred to it. So it's a data type. So let's say we are using username. So the username should be strings. Okay. Remember using the single quote or double quote. Whatever which one you're using, just remember should be consistent. And if you are putting, let's say, maybe the height, okay, or some like length or a width, whatever, then maybe numbers. Okay. Okay, maybe you say this account is rated or invaded, active or non-active, like this, then you can, like, can be put as a boolean. Okay, so all this, so it's referred to the JSON side data types. Also, this is like refer to other language too. So like sometimes a string, record, like hash table, whatever. So all this. So what this is, we call the JSON set object. Okay. And this object, so you will see with a curve bracket, and then because all the keys right here, key. So because if you remember they're strings, so that's why we're using the double quote, or you can use single quote. And then this one should be string, booleans true or false, okay, or also string. Okay, so we can have another object inside. So we have a curve bracket, put another object. So it contain, we can put as an array. So here's a JSON format. Okay, you can define. And in the JSON array, so there are all the sequence of value. So just as what you learned in other programming language, the verbs can be like different types. Okay, so all these like wrap in the square bracket and separate by the commas. Okay, so we always start with the index 0. Sometimes it can start from 1, but most of the time will be 0. Just like same array like we learned from other language. As a values, okay, values, there's an array. Okay, so we have the string and then put something, maybe there's a number. Okay, so here's a tricky in JS, right? The data type is not really a fixed string, so we are available to put it in this way. Okay, just remember. And the objects with like 2 members in like this, or something array with 3 elements. Okay, so maybe 1, 2, 3. Okay, start in the 0. We can put it right here. Then we can put it. Then maybe we can put it the array as an object like value. So we can put it right here. So you see the JSON. Okay, so we can using this way, and we can show as a key value pairs. So it comes a key values. Okay, right here. And when we try to access it, we can use the dot notation. So that's why it's a JSON. We call the notation. Okay, so we have the test, right? Test. We have this object. This object we have the key. So we dot notation using access the key. Here will be a name. So we can get a value. Okay. So we can show it in this way. And when we have another object, that means that if we have an object with the objects in array, so let's say in this object inside, you see a one first curly bracket, and then we have the second object, John right here, James right here. So, and itself also is an object. Okay, so it's a label data, and data we have the 2D array, so it still works. So when you try to access the data, you can say A. Okay, so it's the first object dot, and then second below is a key, right? So it's a key, the name, and then the second is the next second next in the structure is data. Okay, so it's a 2D array, and it's the first index, so right here, and then the first index, okay, right here 0 0, so it will be 22. So you can see, so it looks complicated, but actually it's just like the combination, okay, of all these the objects, okay, so, or including arrays, okay, putting together. So far you see is JSON is flexible, it's a strict JS object. So far you just remember we're using a double quote right here marking for the name right here. Okay, delimited by the brace, that means the curly bracket right here. And then we have we call the name value pair right here, or key value pairs is the name so far, and pretty easy to understand. And of course, we have some like nested object. So if you see another curly bracket, nested, or we can have a nested array, put it here, and it can summarize. You see, we have a null or like true or false numbers. Okay, right here, age. Okay, and sometimes when we need to interact with the JSON file, then we have a called string file. Okay, string file is we can text the object to produce the string from it. Okay, or we can face it. Okay, JSON.face. So we can take the JSON string, face it to an object. Okay, so you can remember there's a two key function we can use. Okay, convert like to a string or face it to a JSON file. So either way you can do it, we can pass it. So let's say if we have an object right here, we're using curly bracket, and then JSON file have a person, name, and age. So if you want to change it to a string, like putting it in this way, then you can use the string file. Okay, so to change it, pass this variable. Okay, and if you want to like convert some string right here, you see this one with a code right here, then you can like face it to JSON file, then you can do it like JSON.face. Okay, face it, and then you can access it using dot notation. So if you watch to this page, then you will know how can you interact with the JSON file in your React.js. Okay, so if you want to post the some data to the API server, like included in your payload, then you can like convert your data, like let's say to JSON, or like after we return it, then if you want to access it, sometimes we can interact with the JSON file directly. So access it and using dot notation. But if you want to like convert it to string, then you can use this function. So either way, but compare, because we say JSON is not XML. So there's some like we know we use like to communicate the data, because JSON is valid in like JavaScript, so like kind of like better with the JS or web than XML. So compare with it, it's like less verbal, okay, and lightweight. So it connect. But for the XML, because we have more like general purpose and makeup, right? So we can define, see, you see something come with an X, and then we can define with structured contents. Okay, so save as a data, so XML. And we use a more like specialized like XML like vocabulary is used, you can see. But this is much more like universal. Okay. And usually we have no version, right? So we have no version, we don't not need to declare it. So we can see it's an object with a curly bracket, key value pair. That's it. So that's is a difference between XML. And another one, because we talk about JSON, then what's about agents? Okay, so this one you will see a lot like for the web programming or some website, you will see agents is not a programming language. Be careful. So it's just a tag, means like for accessing web server from a web page. Okay, so it's like it's called like asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So it's called agents. Okay. So this one it help us to interact with web page, but we are not using for our React because we have something similar fetch, or we have other plugins to help us to communicate. But you can learn or other website they're using it. For the JavaScript, sometimes you see the XML HTTP requests. So actually it's from agents. So it helps us to interchange and manipulate data with the web server. Then we communicate with our API server. So it's a asynchronous communication. Okay, so just remember it's called agents. And there's a revision question that you asked was the ages. So you already know, right? So maybe that asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So if we want to send a request, if you sometimes if you Google it, look at the overflow, when you see something like this, let XHR, okay, the format and the new XML HTTP request. So you know it's ages. Okay, so we can open the connection, what kind of methods, URL, and then sometimes they will pass it you see the script array, sometimes they're optional. So it's like, do is a synchronize what's user, what's the password, and what kind of content, or that means the data in the body. So we're going to send it. So we then connect to server. It kind of like really match to our VM we're going to use, but we are not actually using agents. Okay, so but it's a pretty similar idea. So when you look at this one, we try to start the request and then configure the request, and then we can send it. So after we send it, then we can listen for the events that respond, sometimes low or what's the progress, wherever. Okay, so it's like pretty similar. Okay, we're gonna use, and if we want to post and get in agents, so we can, like, if let's say get, okay, so we can paste the argument in the query string. So if you remember in the lab, we talk about the parameter in query, okay, question mark, and then what's the name, and then equal what's the value, okay, and then the get code in the agents have a size limitation. Okay, just remember we have the limitation, so on amount of data that can be passed. Just be careful for the get. Okay, normally get should be a short URL, like access to the endpoint. And for the post, sometimes method we try to update the information on the server side, then we send it. For get method, we most of the time to try to retrieve the data we know, because we want to show it on our web page, or they are not really like not accepted, like to change it on the server side, and we just get it. Okay, so this is what Andrew is doing. So far you already see two methods. Once open, okay, return the method that are you using get, or like post, put, delete is what define, or the URL. So sometimes if you are hosting the website and then the API software on the same website, then maybe you access same localhost 3000, or if we have another domain name, okay, we can control it, okay. And then that's how we initialize a request. And so far, when we need to send the JSON file in the body, so we need to send it. So once we able to connect to the server and then send the request to it. So if the request is synchronized, asynchronous, so it's by default, right? So we will return action the request is set. Okay. You will see that we have the asynchronous and then await, right? So we need to later you see some code, because when we are loading, so that's why we need to use effect waiting for the return of data. Okay. So if the request is synchronized, then this method, like, it doesn't return until the response has arrived. So you need to be careful, but in default, we always doing it asynchronous. Wait, okay, remember? And we do have some callback functions. What if you remember, we talked a very long time ago, so we cover is called a callback. Like, let's say we're on node and then we have the function. So this function, something like we return it, so it's called the callback, or like we have the return value like back to the event. So this one is the callback. Okay, so let's say we can add the add event listener, okay, for this event, and adding a callback return. And then we can check what kind of, like, maybe handle with the errors, okay, or after reloading or finish, okay, what's the data, we can save it. So most of the time, if we want to save the data, okay, so or check the response, like after we receive the result, right, what's the included, sometimes we can access the status. So after we getting on node, and always come with the status. If you know 200 is always like successful, okay, because 4 not found, okay, 4 all this, and then we always come with the status text. So let's say we have something like, okay, not found, forbidden, okay, so all this. So it depends on your situation or your need of your program, then you can like check the status, or sometimes you can want to show the test status, okay, you can show it, okay, using dot notation, and then you can access some, let's say, respond right here, so it's the whole body. And of course you can just like giving alert, like what's the response, okay, comes out. So also you can check what's the response type, so it's the enumerate string value. So it include the array buffer, JSON, document, text, all this, right? So you can check. So it will come like really this format. If you have testing, adding a script, so we can create the Ajax. Okay, if you see some source code showing this way, so actually we are using Ajax like connect it to get. Okay, so what's the files? Okay, so it's a true, return it, and once we unload, we just do getting the callback. Okay, so with a callback, and then we'll send it. So when we have a callback function right here, So what's the event? So your file contains the text, what's the target response text? So that's so far. This is what we're going to do. So right here, this one, you can change it to wherever you like. Okay, maybe we have the .php, so it's like I'm putting on the server side. There's some scripts, so it depends on. Okay, but this one we just for testing, we just putting the test and that's it. Okay, um, you need to learn. That's like what we're using for the website and for the API server or the in the VM, we have the fetch function. Okay, pretty similar. Okay. Um, just need to know. Okay. And of course, you can add some like certain request header. Okay, there are certain header we can add it or like maybe get all the response headers. So it will return the strings with all the header information or response header only. Okay, return the text specific header. Okay, so we can get from the edges. Also, sometimes we can abort the request in the, so if you want to start it, then we can abort it or like on ready state change. So this one is the property contains the event handler. So when there's a ready state attribute change. So right here, we try to create a new um, request. Okay, and then once there's a state change, what's this function? So let's say what's the ready state 4 or status state 200, both of them, then we will give an alert what's the response test. Okay, so so far in below it's just open and then send it, right? And if we access this a timeout, so the timeout what's the time of time, so or like on timeout what you're going to do. So all these like you can add in other methods or check the properties. So this like what we can access using edges. Okay. So so far if we need to sending like the JSON file in edges, okay, so far we can like sometimes based on the response text or we want to face it. So far we can like add it in this response data and then face JSON. If you remember, we have something handle like we have the string, okay, string, then we can use the face, right? So it's another syntax. Okay, the keywords they call the face JSON. Okay, well we want to face it. So if you remember dot JSON dot face, right? So this one you'll be using the JSON itself to face the response test or response test itself, where we using the face face JSON. Okay, function right here. So they are all acceptable. Okay, so you can pick the one you like to handle the JSON file using the agents. Okay, then we'll ask a question. Okay, so is it safer? Okay, if to like using the XML HTTP request. So far for the JSON data, they come on the same server. Okay, they run like the page. So as a event right here of the data set, they are no like less secure than original HTML. So you can, if you really like that, you can use the like face JSON file or the JSON.face like instead of it. So you can think about that. Here just like give you more like an example of a JSON file. Let's say if you try to get it on load function. Okay, so sometimes if you remember, we access right the level 1, level 2, if you remember like the document, right? And then get the element by ID. So what's the ID in the HTML? So we try to assign. So this response test, so we can edit and we access to a certain page and then get it. So after we click on the button, okay, so after we click the content, so if you see the ID, we have the like let's say demo, then we will paste right here. So that means once we fetch the data and then we will attach it to this like div and def. So we'll see. And there's another like called the fetch function. If you see, so it's an interface to make the edges like called in the JS. So that's what I'm saying. So we're calling the fetch return a promise. So this one a promise is the response object. So if you look at our HTML the happy.js, okay, the happy.js also we have our response, so return. So we have the first we will create a variable. Sometimes when you work on your project for the repeating using URL, you can like declare constant URL, okay, variables, and then you can just pass in. Or sometimes we have the called the root endpoint first, and then you can concatenate with the maybe the path and then with the parameters, queries, wherever you want, so you can concatenate and pass in this fetch function. What's the then we will after we send respond. Okay, so what we're going to do? Okay, so we respond like say it's a JSON file, and then what you're going to do? This a report. Maybe we're getting if you remember with the mapping function. Okay, say dot map, and then we will get in the name. Okay, save it the list. Then we can log it this list. Okay, and if we catch some certain error, we can do a console log. So here's the fetch function. So kind of like making the AJ's like call. That's what it's doing. So far, we just like go over what the AJ is, what the JSON, and then what's the format and syntax of the AJs and JSON, right? So if we want to write or read the JSON, so what's the structure? And so far we went through. Hopefully it can help you, okay, to start your project, and then you try to work on the exercise. And I would say for your first start from your like first Happy.js and then our second lab, and then you should able to pass in the parameter. Okay, post it with the payload. Okay, and then return it with the response. Okay, and maybe you need to prepare for your coming assignment, like building a Happy.js server. Okay, and able to test it. Okay, so you should able to do that. So once you finish this part, then I just assume like able you create the page and then interact with your API server, and then this kind of like almost 60% complete, and later we will cover the MongoDB. Then you almost are able to know the whole structure of the web programming. And so far, that's it. Thank you so much.